Today I'm going to be making a black matrix opal pendant. I'm going to go through all the stages, and I've had a lot of questions about matrix opal, and I hope that this video will answer most of them. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to select the suitable opal. This is a good one. I'm going to use a part of that. Then we're going to mark the area to be cut, then actually cut the marked area out with a diamond trim saw, grind and polish it to a nice dome and polished finish, and then we'll treat the stone to get the black color back. Here's the stone that I've selected. It doesn't look so good because it's not polished. It's got a lot of red, and red's the best color for opal, theoretically. And that particular area looked pretty good. This is our setting. It's a nice setting that's 14 millimeters by 12 millimeters in size. We can put the area, the pendant, in the approximate area that we want to use, and it looks pretty good. So the next step will be to actually use a scribing pen. This is an aluminum scribing pen, and I'm going to use this template to get a precise area for which to cut with the trim saw. And here I've actually scored or scribed the area to be cut. Now we turn on the trim saw and get to work. The idea is to cut the stone out without cutting your fingers and without cutting too deeply into the aluminum markings. In actuality, I've been asked, will the trim saw cut your fingers? And the answer is yes, but you really have to press directly into it. You can actually touch the edge of the blade, and it won't hurt you. So I'm trying to stay close. Looks like I got a little too close there, but we need to get our stone out of there, and finally we've got it. Here we have it. Looks good. I cut into the aluminum edge on that side, but it's got some edges to be rounded. And if we look at the side, there's a great deal of difference in thickness, and so we're going to have to work on the thickness as well. I like to use the 220 diamond mesh wheel to do my shaping. It cuts pretty quickly and pretty accurately, but sometimes it just isn't quite fast enough. And with matrix opal in particular, it's okay to use a coarser wheel like this 100 mesh wheel. I'm getting the edge. You can see it cuts pretty well. Sometimes too well. You have to really watch it. And now I've got the approximate stone, but we really do have to work on the thickness and refine the edge of it before we can do anything. So I'm back to the 100 wheel. What I'm doing here is I'm thinning out the thickness, but I'm also making a bevel. There's the bevel at the top. That's just going to give me a guideline to make it thinner and how thick I have to make it. I'm pushing hard on the wheel and taking a lot of material off, thinning it out. Here I'm shaping it and continue working it to get the back exactly right and make it flat. Here's the final stone before we grind and polish it. It looks pretty good and ready to work. Let's measure it and see if it's about the set size we need. It's 12 millimeters wide and it's about 14 and a half tall, so that's about right. It's best to stay on the wide side. So this is what we'll be doing, working with, and the next step is to create a dome on the stone. This is a fun part of cutting stones, but the idea is to reduce the flat area by rolling the edges in. That's step one. Step two, there can be up to 6 or more of these steps, but each one makes the edges round and reduces the size of the flat area on top. Next phase, I lower the angle, and there's just one small tiny area that's flat in the very center. And at this point, there's not much left to be done. There are 4 areas that have slight points on them, and we'll smooth those out, and we'll end up with our full dome finished cabochon. But there's one last step, and the step 5, it's the bottom edges need beveling. They need to be beveled so that it'll sit properly in the setting. So let's get back to the stone. Here's the one we just looked at. It's ready to be beveled. I've put it on a dopstick, which is actually a chopstick from an Asian restaurant. I find it makes pretty good dopsticks. And here I'm going with the first phase, sort of beveling the top or putting the dome on just by removing the outer edges. And so the outer edges at this point are slightly rounded, and we've still got that broad flat area on the top. We'll continue to work with the 220 wheel, gradually rolling it in and making larger round areas at the periphery, and the flat area will get smaller and smaller. Here you can see it's gotten somewhat smaller. And the color is disappearing at the edge because, as I've been asked, how thick does matrix treat? And it really treats about 1 millimeter. So continue to work it, rolling it in and rounding it out. And with a lot of work and careful cutting, we've got this final, a nice dome-shaped bevel. And the next thing we have to do is polish it up and take it from there. This is my setup for polishing. I use Nova wheels. Nova wheels are made by Diamond Pacific. It's a resin with embedded diamond dust. The 1200 wheel that I'm working on now is very good for smoothing, but it's also good for cutting. You can reduce the size of the stone with a 1200. I tried to reduce it enough, but it doesn't appear to fit in the setting. So I'm going to go back to the 1200 wheel and see if I can't get it to fit into the setting. 1200 does not have a good polish. This is wet, so it looks polished. It fits the setting, but it's not ready for prime time. So I'm going to take it through the 3000 mesh Nova wheel, which is the first real polishing step. If you take a look at the after the 3000, you can see it does have a polish. It's not a very good polish. This is dry, not wet. And I've gone on and used the 14,000 wheel, and it fits in the setting, and now we're ready to treat the opal. I put the opal in a concentrated sugar solution for 3 days under heat, and that will allow the stone to soak up the sugar. Take it out a little bit. The sugar is very thick. The water's been boiled off or evaporated off, and this doesn't really tell you anything. It just gives you a close-up. But I do not ever wash the sugar off. I rub it off with cloth or a paper towel, and you can see it doesn't look as shiny as before, but that's just dried sugar. Next step is to put it into a slow cooker with concentrated sulfuric acid, and that's in our crock pot. People have asked me, how do I get the opal in and out of the acid? Well, it can be very difficult without this. I have a flask, really a beaker that I've cut holes into, and the acid goes straight into the beaker, and it's ready to be heated. I should have worn gloves and eye protection for this. I had eye protection, but no gloves. And after 24 hours, it looks pretty good. The polish is good. That's a 14,000 mesh polish. Got the color. Looks great. But it's not good enough. A good polish will look much better than this. So what I use for final polishing of matrix opal is dry diamond dust, not wet. If it's wet, it'll soak into tiny cracks and you'll have little white streaks forever. So I use dry diamond dust with a felt burr, and this is the 50,000 mesh result. Nice and polished, set in the setting, and it looks great. Almost anybody could appreciate having something like this, except maybe my wife, who's kind of sick of opal. But it looks good. And thanks for watching.